Okay, so picture this. It's April 7th, 2026, and the world is literally holding its breath. We are on the brink of a massive conflict, one that could totally redraw the map of the Middle East. And right at the heart of it all, the Strait of Hormuz, with a terrifying deadline just hours away from exploding.
And then comes this message from the American president. And look, this wasn't some formal, behind-the-scenes diplomatic cable. No, this was a public post for the whole world to see, and it sent absolute shockwaves everywhere. The threat couldn't have been clearer. If Iran doesn't open the Strait of Hormuz, the consequences would be, well, catastrophic. A lot of people were genuinely afraid this was the lead-up to a nuclear strike.
So, you've got American forces poised to strike. The world is bracing for the absolute worst. And then, at the 11th hour, I'm talking just 90 minutes before the attack, everything changed. A message comes through that just flips the entire situation on its head and pulls everyone back from the edge. Okay, so how on earth did we get to this point? To really get it, we need to rewind and look at the 50 days of conflict leading up to this moment. Because, this wasn't just some political chess game. It had a real, devastating human cost.
And the human cost, it was just staggering. We're talking about over 4,000 people killed in just 50 days. That's more than 2,000 in Iran, another 2,000 plus in Lebanon, not to mention dozens of Israeli and American soldiers. And it's so important to remember, these aren't just numbers on a screen. Every single one represents a family, a life, just shattered by this escalating violence.
This final, terrifying threat really didn't just pop up out of nowhere. There was a clear pattern of escalation here. The U.S. had given Iran 4 different deadlines to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And what happened? 4 times, Iran just ignored them.
And the language being used here was just, wow, incredibly inflammatory. It wasn't just these public posts either. Trump was explicitly threatening to hit civilian infrastructure. We're talking power plants, bridges. Things got so heated that legal experts, even the UN Secretary General, had to step in and warn that, hey, this would be a war crime under international law.
So can you imagine? Embassies are scrambling, issuing emergency warnings, and then, bam, the news breaks. With literally just 90 minutes to spare, Iran and the U.S. agreed to a 2-week ceasefire. And get this, the surprise mediator who pulled it all together? Pakistan. What a stunning diplomatic twist, especially when you think about Pakistan's complicated relationship with both countries.
But here's the thing. Even while this super fragile peace was being worked out, something else was happening. A really high-stakes mission that went down on April 3rd, and it revealed a truth on the ground that was a whole different story from America's official narrative of total dominance.
And this is where you really see that gap between the rhetoric and the reality. On one hand, you had Trump publicly saying, "We have total air dominance." But on the ground, his forces were running into some really stiff resistance. In fact, Iranian air defenses actually managed to shoot down a U.S. F-15E Strike Eagle, one of America's most advanced jets. That pretty much punctured the whole story of an easy victory.
So what happens next is like something straight out of an action movie. It's an incredible race against time. First, the CIA kicks off a whole deception campaign, trying to send Iranian search parties in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, the injured airman, this guy heroically climbs a 7,000-foot mountain just to get a short radio signal out. That single message, "God is good," triggers this massive covert rescue op, sending in hundreds of elite U.S. Special Forces, Delta Force, Navy SEAL Team 6, to get him out.
And look, the rescue was a success. They got their guy out, which is incredible. But it came at a really steep price. The official story was that it was this flawless operation, but that kind of hid the fact that several aircraft were hit, or even crashed. They actually had to be destroyed right there on the ground to stop them from falling into Iranian hands. So yeah, hardly total air dominance, right?
Okay, so back to the ceasefire. The ink on that agreement was barely dry when the whole thing was almost completely blown up. And it wasn't by Iran, and it wasn't by the U.S. It was another major player in the region. Just hours, literally hours into the ceasefire, Israel launched over 100 strikes on Lebanon. It was the deadliest bombing of Lebanon by Israel, killing more than 300 people. As you can imagine, this created immediate chaos and confusion. It threatened to just torpedo the entire peace effort before it even had a chance to start.
So what was the problem? Well, here's the core of the disagreement. Pakistan, who brokered the deal, said the ceasefire covered everyone involved, including Lebanon.
But almost immediately, both the US and Israel came out and said, whoa, no, that was never part of the deal. And this huge misunderstanding, or maybe misrepresentation, put Iran in a really tough spot.
But despite all that confusion, the peace talks did get underway in Islamabad, and after 21 straight hours of negotiating, Iran made its position crystal clear. They laid out a 10-point proposal, and at the heart of it were these 4 key demands. Basically, they wanted sanctions gone, control over the strait, U.S. forces out of the region, and, this is the big one, acceptance of their right to enrich uranium.
Well, on April 12, the talks just collapsed, and the reason why was pretty obvious. Sure, they agreed on a few smaller things, but the nuclear issue, that was a gap they just couldn't cross. The U.S. wanted the entire nuclear program dismantled, period. Iran, on the other hand, was only willing to offer a temporary 5-year pause. There was just no middle ground to be found.
So, with diplomacy officially off the table, the conflict takes a new turn. It shifts from military threats to all-out economic warfare. Right after the talks failed, the U.S. rolled out a brand new, really aggressive strategy in the waters around Iran.
What they did was create this sort of double blockade. So you had Iran blocking the Strait of Hormuz from the inside, and now you have the U.S. Navy creating a second outer ring. The goal here was simple, a complete economic siege, to cut off all of Iran's oil exports, even to allies like China.
And the result? It was pure chaos. On April 17th, out of the blue, Iran announces the strait is open again. Global oil prices immediately drop 10%. But then, just 24 hours later, they do a complete 180, close the strait again, and start firing on commercial ships. And get this, they even fired on 2 ships from India, a country that was supposed to be a friendly partner.
And that pretty much brings us right up to the present moment in this crisis. We're in this incredibly fragile, temporary pause, but there are multiple clocks ticking down at the same time, leaving the entire region and really the whole world on high alert.
So let's just recap where things stand right now. The main US-Iran ceasefire, it ends tomorrow. There's a separate 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, which is some good news, but it's kind of overshadowed by this controversial new death penalty law Israel just passed for Palestinians. And all the while, that U.S. naval blockade of Iran is still very much in effect.
Basically, everything is up in the air. All the pieces are on the chessboard, but nobody knows what the next move is going to be. Which leaves us with the big question, right? After pulling back from the brink once, can they actually find a path to a real, lasting peace? Or was this 2-week pause just delaying the inevitable?